I hate UX for having these stories when I need to be awake in 4 hours. Oh well, I've got a story from my tour in Iraq. To preface it a little bit, I'm a 22-year-old male, 11B infantry, based out of Fort Lewis, 520th INF. I saw some disturbing, non-paranormal, mental scar-leaving shit during my tour. So we were based out of FOB Warhorse, near the city of Bakuba. We were about 3 days into Operation Arrowhead Ripper, and I was the platoon's radio telephone operator, RTO. For the past few months, we'd been living in the city for days at a time to hold the ground, instead of going back to the FOB. We'd hold up in some random house, just like any other night. We were lucky enough to find a house with power and a TV that was not destroyed. We had watched some that night, and gradually drifted off to sleep. I woke up from my 0100 guard shift at the door with the radio. I'd been sitting there for about 15 minutes when the TV clicked on. Nothing but static. I did not think much of it because it was satellite. No cable or real network stations in Iraq, to my knowledge. I ignored it for a while until I started hearing someone speaking Arabic. I turned to look at the television and saw what looked like the outline of a 10-year-old boy. I thought I was hallucinating a bit, having been running on 36 hours of continuous operations before this. It was at that point I started catching bits and pieces of what was coming from the TV. The words I picked out were holes, courtyards, and bodies, all in Arabic, but that was all I could understand. Thinking this was a bad hallucination and being fairly creeped out, I told the outline that we would look into it in the morning. The outline nodded and the television shut off. I glanced at my watch and noticed it was almost 0200. I woke up my relief and did not mention the incident to him. The next morning, as we were getting ready to move out, I wandered around the courtyard, trying to find hollow spots. I found 2. I mentioned this to the platoon leader. He had me call higher and tell them that we would be delayed that morning to check them out. We started in on them with sledgehammers and hooligan tools. Within an hour, the first one was opened up. We found 5 AK-47s, 20 loaded AK mags, an RPG-7 tube, and 3 rounds for it. Not too long after that, the second hole was breached. We found a decomposing family in there. There was a father who appeared to have been about 35, a mother who appeared to have been about 30, and a male child who appeared to have been about the age of 8 to 10. All 3 of them had been shot in the forehead, execution style. I never told anyone in my unit about the kid in the static. I spent the first half of the tour working in operations as free as an OTO. Our battalion was an FOB loyalty for a week, doing clearing operations in one neighborhood or another during Christmas of 06. There was not a lot of room in this FOB, so they put 10 of us on the 6th floor of one of the buildings. To get to where we stayed, you had to go up 3 flights of stairs in the living area, go through a locked door, then up another 3 flights of stairs. The trick was this. Floors 4 and 5 had previously been bombed out. No major structural damage. The building was not going to collapse, but there were some damn big holes and a lot of rubble. Floor 6 had an observation point that could see over most of southern Baghdad. It was used during the initial invasion as a Special Forces / Delta Force sniper overwatch position. This sounds cool until you were told that the guys who were using it, the best of the best, were sniped themselves. Oh, yeah, did we forget to tell you? This was one of Saddam's torture palaces in Baghdad. We did not find that last one out until we were packing up to leave. I didn't have it as bad as the other guys during that operation. I worked night shift in the TOC, Tactical Operations Center, and slept during the day. All I ever had to deal with was the feeling of being watched. The guys on day shift, they had all sorts of freaky shit. They'd all be settled into their cots and sleeping bags, talking, and the fire alarm would go off. Previous to this, there were no batteries in said alarm. It was also cut off from the building's power supply. The one door to the room from the hall would open and close on its own after it had been firmly shut and locked. Don't forget the always pleasant feeling of angry / hostile presence watching you while you sleep. Yeah, that place was great. Last one I've got. This was a couple of days after the Static Kid incident. We were clearing the north end of Khartoum, which was supposed to be the ISI, Iraqi State of Islam stronghold for all of Bakuba. The locals had told us about a prison house the ISI had used and vacated before we showed up. We moseyed on over to check it out. The first thing I felt when I walked into the place was just pure, unadulterated death. The ISI had left long before we got there. There were no obvious bloodstains anywhere. They tried to burn any papers or computer hardware that showed what they did there. We still found things linking people and caught the fuckers, but this place just reeked of bad juju. Like, you could feel the Reaper himself sitting in what used to be the living room, drinking chai. It was easy to see how the place had been a prison/execution house. Doors had been modified or straight up replaced, so they would only open to a key from the outside. No furniture, except for a couple of worn tables. Random implements of torture hidden around the house. Large and small knives, hand drills, lengths of chain, a bullwhip, etc. There was not a whole lot of blood, but what cooking or outdoor project requires 10 butcher knives, a cleaver, 4 paring knives, and 3 hand drills? That place was just fucking evil. Be me. I was a Marine Corps Staff Sergeant at the time. I was attached to a specialized reconnaissance unit. This was during Operation Iraqi Freedom. What happened to me has been classified for a long time, but now that I'm dying, it doesn't really matter. The doctors gave me 3 or maybe 4 months, but with how much pain I'm in daily, I doubt I will last that long. This happened in July 2003, 4 months after the initial invasion. Baghdad had fallen, but the country was far from secure. My unit received orders to investigate one of Saddam's lesser-known palaces on the outskirts of Baghdad. Intelligence suggested it might contain hidden documents related to weapons programs or insurgent communications. Our team consisted of 6 Marines, including myself. I will not be giving their names. I will refer to them only as A, B, C, D, and D. They were a lieutenant, a corporal, and 2 lance corporals. One of them was a combat medic. We were joined by an Iraqi interpreter, just a local guide who claimed to have worked in the palace before the war. The palace was not grand like the ones you saw on TV. It was older, more fortress than showpiece. It was built on foundations said to have dated back to the Ottoman Empire. As we approached at dusk, I noticed the interpreter growing increasingly agitated. I asked if something was wrong. He hesitated, but said the place had a reputation among the locals. I told him to stop being so damn cryptic and spit it out. He only said this to me. They say Saddam built here because he believed it would grant him power. But the old people, they warned him. They say this ground is forbidden. All of us scoffed and laughed. Fucking nut job. I said, let me guess, it's haunted, right? The interpreter did not laugh. He said it was worse than haunted. The old stories say a king once stood here. A king who made pacts with things that should not be named. My grandfather told tales of workers who disappeared during construction. Saddam had their families executed to prevent rumors. Whatever. The only thing we had to worry about were insurgents. We moved out after that. The interior was a maze of corridors and chambers. They were all decaying. Most of the rooms were empty, stripped of anything valuable. We methodically swept the west wing before moving deeper into the central structure. The sun had set completely. Even with our tactical lights, it was tough to shake the darkness. I first noticed something off when we entered what appeared to be an office. The room temperature dropped dramatically. Our breath suddenly became visible in front of us. On the wall hung a massive painting of Saddam, but something was wrong with it. The eyes seemed to follow us. The proportions of the face were subtly distorted. Is it just me or is it fucking freezing in here? C whispered. And does that painting look weird to anyone else? B added. The interpreter approached the painting, studying it closely. This is not right. This room was a storage area, not an office. And this frame. He ran his fingers along the ornate golden edge. He pressed something that made a soft click. The painting swung outward, revealing a hidden passage. Jackpot. This is exactly what we were looking for. Beyond the passage was a narrow staircase descending deep underground. The air grew colder with each step. There was a strange odor, like copper and something else I could not identify. Smelled really earthy. At the bottom, we discovered a large circular chamber lined with stone that looked far older than the palace above. The walls were covered in strange symbols. They were not Arabic or Persian. No one could translate them. In the center stood a stone altar, and surrounding it were 7 stone pedestals. Each one was holding what appeared to be ancient clay jars. The interpreter approached the symbols. "This is not possible. These are Sumerian, but they aren't right." "Can you read them?" I asked. "Parts. This speaks of 7 who watch, and hear. Their eyes shall open when the stars align." "Great. Ancient Mesopotamian mumbo-jumbo," B muttered. I noticed that his knuckles were white around his rifle. A approached the altar. "Whatever this is, we need to document it and search for any hidden documents. A, take photos. D, check those containers. The rest of you, secure the perimeter." D cautiously approached one of the clay jars. It was sealed with wax and bearing a symbol similar to an eye. Should I open it? Before anyone could answer, the interpreter shouted, "No." His voice echoed through the chamber. "These are not meant to be disturbed. These are soul containers." "We're not here for a history lesson," A snapped. "We have orders to search for intelligence." "Lieutenant," I said quietly, "maybe we should listen to him." Too late. D had already broken the seal on one jar. A sound filled the chamber. It was somewhere between a whisper and a horrifying scream. The air around the jar seemed to ripple, and D staggered back, dropping it. The clay shattered on the stone floor. Nothing happened for about 3 heartbeats. Then D gasped, clutching at his eyes. "I can't see, I can't," he screamed, his voice cut off abruptly as he collapsed. E rushed over to him. "He's breathing but unconscious. Pupils are... Jesus Christ." We gathered around. D's pupils had expanded until his entire eyes were black, without whites. Then, as we watched, his eyes opened up again. They opened impossibly wide. The lids were tearing at the corners as the eyeballs swelled. "What the fuck?" C stumbled back. The guide was praying rapidly in Arabic. The interpreter started translating in a shaky voice. "He says we have released one of the watchers. We must leave immediately." "We're not leaving him," he insisted, but the guide was already running for the stairs. That is when D's body began to change. His skin rippled, bones cracking as his limbs elongated. His jaw dislocated, mouth stretching into a gaping maw. But worst were the eyes. They kept growing and bulging from the sockets. They looked like they were going to burst. His cheeks and neck and arms started to bulge and tear and form openings, dozens of them. B opened fire. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just from panic. The bullets tore into D's body, but the blood that came out was black and viscous. The thing that had been D lurched upright with inhuman speed. It seized B by the throat. More holes opened up across its fingers as they dug into his skin. A and I fired simultaneously, emptying our magazines into the creature. It released B, who collapsed. He was gasping and clawing at his neck where dark veins were already separating from the handprints. "Run," I shouted. "Everyone up the stairs now." We retreated, C helping B, while E and A provided covering fire. The creature did not pursue immediately. It seemed more interested in the remaining clay jars. Halfway up the stairs, B began convulsing. His eyes rolled back and then forward again. They were entirely black. C tried to hold him, but B's arm shot out with impossible strength. His fingers were elongating as they wrapped around C's face. I didn't hesitate. I put a bullet through B's head. C stared at me in shock. There was black blood dripping down his face where B's fingers had punctured his skin. "Keep moving," I ordered. But I could already see the blackness spreading across C's eyes. We made it to the office level when C collapsed. His body contorted. His buns were snapping as more holes began opening up across his skin. A tried to drag him, but I pulled him back. "He's gone," I said. "We have to contain this." A understood. We retreated beyond the office door and sealed it, pushing furniture against it as inhuman screams echoed from within. The interpreter's face was ashen. "We must destroy this place, all of it." "Agreed," A said grimly, "but we need to warn command first. This could be a biological weapon." We never got the chance to call it in. As we moved toward the palace entrance, we found the guard's body sprawled across the marble floor. His eyes were now just empty sockets, apparently burst outward. We made a desperate break for the exit. Halfway across the grand entrance hall, he screamed. Something had caught him, but I could not see what. He clawed at his face as darkness spread across his eyes. A did not hesitate. He put E down with a clean headshot. Only A, the interpreter, and I made it outside. "What's the containment protocol for this?" is what the interpreter asked. Hell if I knew. A made the call. Within 30 minutes, an airstrike reduced the palace to rubble. I don't know what he told them to authorize it. 3 days later, A reported seeing eyes in his bathroom mirror. He was obviously going crazy, just haunted by what we saw. I told him it must have been some kind of booby trap, a gas or infection to make us see things, to get us to kill each other. He didn't really seem to believe me though. By the end of the week, he had taken his own life. The interpreter disappeared on his way to debrief. I was quarantined and debriefed for weeks. They found nothing physically wrong with me. They could not work out what kind of weapon had been used on us. They found no traces of any kind of virus or bacteria in my system. I'm sorry that I don't have any more concrete answers to share. Sometimes I wonder if that incident has anything to do with my terminal illness. I guess it's not out of the realms of possibility. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. This happened during my third deployment in Iraq. The platoon had taken up residence in 2 houses in a village several miles south of Haifa. One day, I heard our translator having a heated discussion with 2 local men. I grabbed my gear and my rifle and walked out to the road to investigate. I asked the translator what was going on. He tells me that these 2 men are crazy and assures me that they are not dangerous. I ask what they want, and he mumbles about them being superstitious or something along those lines. He assures me that everything is okay and that my attention is not needed. It took a bit of prying, but the translator finally says they were having a Wolfman problem. A what? They said they are afraid that if they shoot at it, the local troops will be alarmed and attack their house. They tell us that this Wolfman has been coming around late at night and has already killed a few sheep, and they are worried it's going to start attacking their family. So I assume somewhere in translation, the word dog has turned into wolf, and is somehow being conveyed to me by the translator as Wolfman. So I try to clarify, do they mean a dog? The translator is a bit hesitant, almost like he's embarrassed that his countrymen are wasting everyone's time by believing in such nonsense, but they are adamant that their house is being besieged by a Wolfman. Again, I ask if it's just a big dog, and no, it's a Wolfman. So, I ask if there are wolves in Iraq, and they are all in agreement that yes, there are wolves in Iraq, but there are no wolves in this part of the country, and it's not a wolf or a large dog that has been killing their sheep. They insist that it is a Wolfman. The translator is trying to usher them away, but at this point, I am very intrigued, and still a bit confused over the whole dog-wolf-wolfman thing. So, I ask them to describe what they are seeing. They tell me that every few nights it comes around. They first see it on 4 legs, as it skulks around their small compound, but then it stands up like a man, walking on 2 legs. It growls, and it has lunged at the men. But as they retreat, it turns its attention to the sheep, their own dogs refusing to help protect human or sheep. They tell me that the creature has killed a few of their sheep, and that they have even found one of the bodies ripped apart, with portions of it eaten away. They have been hesitant to shoot for fear of troop involvement. The translator says that he has heard of such a creature, and even though this type of story has been spread through the area by various people, it is no more than superstitions and illusions. He assures me that there is no such thing as a Wolfman. I tell the two men that they should feel free to protect themselves and their livestock. And, with my interest piqued, I get the men to agree to allowing us to stop by from time to time and set up an observation post while we are out on patrol. A couple of nights later, I join a night patrol and we head towards the house. We are greeted by one of the men, and he gives us entry to the compound. We go up to the roof and set out sentries to overlook a nearby bridge. About an hour later, the homeowner comes up with a panicked look on his face. He's talking really fast, excitement and concern in his voice and body language. He is wanting me to come with him. I tell two others to come with me, and we all follow the man. He leads us to the other side of the house, and we exit onto an enclosed courtyard where the sheep are being kept. The sheep are making plenty of noise, and the man is pointing to a dark corner of the yard. I strain my eyes to see what he is pointing at. Finally, I see it, a large wolf/dog just standing in the corner. I ask the two other guys with me if they see it too, and they both agree that it's a wolf or a dog. It moved behind a small section on the wall, and I could hear popping and cracking noises like joints or knuckles being cracked. When it stepped out from behind the wall, it was upright on two legs. It swiftly and effortlessly jumped the perimeter wall, and we could hear it running away on 2 feet. I conveyed to the man as best as I could, if that thing ever showed up again, feel free to shoot it, if he could, and if he did, to please let me know. Be me, a translator with the US Air Force in Iraq, specifically Kurdistan. On a tiny army outpost, I am the only American that speaks Kurdi fluently. I am doing boring translation work, next to no combat anywhere near where I am stationed. I get pretty close with the local militia guys. One even tries to wed me to his 13-year-old daughter. They tell me stories of their lives, mostly about fighting Saddam. One night, we were going to a nearby village and stopped for the night. To pass the time, we told scary stories. Everyone tells pretty decent stories, but nothing too spooky for me. Until the last guy, who tells a story of some militiamen who went out into the desert only to return demented ghouls. His descriptions were gruesome. Men who looked like corpses, twisted out of shape, filled with shrapnel, riddled with bullet holes, faces melted from fires. But the very worst part, he said, was that they only spoke with what I can only translate as insidious demon voices. This shook me a bit, as the stories told before were ancient folktales. This was modern, recent, within living memory. So I did what cocky American military men do when they are frightened. I laughed it off. I told him it was the scariest story of the night by far, and very nearly spooked me. No one else laughed. They looked at me sadly, silently, almost guiltily. Finally, the storyteller told me the words that haunt me to this day. Lieutenant, this was not a story. Later that year, we finally found insurgents in the desert and started leading raids in the desert. Not much shooting, only 1 or 2 proper firefights. Most of them were rebellious teenagers or illiterate, disgruntled peasants, so we beat them fairly readily. Until one day, they attacked the base. Unfortunately for them, they did so on the day that we had tanks passing through. It was a slaughter, the ragged remnants of their raiding party running into the desert. The tank guys asked me if I wanted them to pursue. The storyteller was nearby and must have realized what we were talking about, as he ran over shouting in English, "No, no, bad thing." The storyteller then starts yelling at me in Kurdi that I must not kill them in desert. The evil things happen to those who are killed by shells, bullets, or bombs in the desert. I listened to him seriously, but the lead tank guy laughed at him, muttering to his buddies about the dickless goat fucker. I tried to ignore the idiot tank man and ask the storyteller what he means by evil things. He tells me, dead serious, that they become ghouls. This freaks me out. He would not say this unless he absolutely believed it. Yet, I could not just let the enemy escape, regroup, and counterattack. So I decided to call in an airstrike, giving them enough time to get far enough from the base and the village. This upset both the bloodthirsty tank guys and the storyteller, who walked away muttering. Later, I got confirmation that the airstrike was successful, leaving all insurgents dead or dying. A few weeks later, after a routine patrol, a couple soldiers burst into my office shouting about something they saw in the desert. They say they were about 5 miles out into the desert when they say they saw a strange figure sitting in the sand. They assumed the figure was human until they got closer. Then they realized that it was not, at least no longer. They said it looked like a mangled, bombed-out corpse, but it was moving. They said it had a hyena in its hands, tearing away the poor beast's flesh until it caught sight of them. It looked at them with clouded, unseeing eyes and let out a guttural howl. Then they opened fire, expending 2 clips each, but it hardly fazed the thing. The figure then began crawling toward them, shouting in what they identified as Arabic. They got back in their vehicle and sped back to base. After they finished the report, the younger one burst into tears. I sent them to the infirmary to be examined by our unit's medic. I also ordered a full sweep of the perimeter to see if we could find it. After that, I went to my quarters to clear my head. I must have dozed off, because I awoke to the sound of gunfire. I ran outside and saw my men and Kurdish militiamen shouting and shooting at something in the distance. I shouted for everyone to hold their fire and shut the hell up. Everyone obeyed, yet there was still yelling. As I looked where they were shooting, I saw it. It was dragging itself across the sand, shouting in both Arabic and Kurdi. It was a nightmare. Its voice was otherworldly, its flesh hanging loosely from its bones. I was terrified. But people were counting on me, looking at me for guidance, so I swallowed my fear and called for the medic and a stretcher. At first no one moves, but after I repeat the order, a few soldiers rush to the task. I order the soldier who fetched the stretcher and the medic to follow me and bring this thing to the infirmary for examination. This took quite a bit of prompting, but finally they complied, and we walked out to meet it. I almost didn't make it. I almost ran back to the safety of the camp, but I soldiered on and made it to the creature. It stopped advancing and stared at me. It resumed talking. How did you? We moved to pick it up, all of us wearing long rubber gloves, and it made him move toward one of the stretcher bearers, causing him to jump away. It fell onto the stretcher and grabbed the medic's leg. He screamed and I kicked it, breaking its arm. We restrained it, and before our eyes, its broken arm began to heal. Kind of. It mended itself, but backwards, its hand at an unnatural angle. We brought it back to the infirmary, everyone giving us a wide berth. As we began to examine it, the chaplain burst in. This chaplain was a southern gent who absolutely despised me. He demanded to see the monster so that he could exorcise it. I told him it was the most idiotic thing that I ever heard, and I'm sure he would have had a retort, except the thing started speaking again. Idiotic thing. The chaplain immediately went over to the creature and started praying. I stood by the creature and looked it in the eye. What are you? You. I moved toward the door, done with this shit. I decided to call my superiors, let them handle whatever the hell that was. I stepped across the threshold, and on. I whirled around. That thing called me by my first name. It couldn't have known my first name. Most of my men didn't even know my first name. The chaplain prayed more intensely. I moved to the creature again. Dear Anon, thank you for the letter you sent your father and I. We are so glad to hear that you are well. It recited the entire letter that I had received from my parents a week prior. How do you know that? Dearest Susie, how I long to see again. My life here, though not uneventful, is missing the company of my love. That was something I had wrote to my fiancé. How? How do you know Susie? Tell me. It continued reciting the entirety of my most recent letter. I had enough. I wanted to destroy whatever that was. I was blind with rage. Before I realized what I was doing, I had drawn my knife and raised it above the monster's head. As I brought it down, the creature stopped its recitation abruptly. No, Susie, Susie from St. Louis. I dropped my knife. How? Please, I need to know. Know you. Find you, anon. Always find you. I backed away. The chaplain had stopped praying. Everyone looked between me and the monster. I left wordlessly. I later set up a guard rotation and called my commanding officer. He thought I was kidding until I sent him a video of it. In a couple days, 5 helicopters came, some wearing hazmat suits, others MP uniforms. I was reassigned and later promoted. I never saw my Kurdish friends again, and I never found out exactly what it was. I now live in DC, doing embassy work.